Ladies and gentlemen, hello, welcome back once more to the Professor's Lab. Now let's address the elephant in the room. There is no camera today. I'm currently getting set up in a new pseudo-office space. So yeah, there's that. I've also been super busy with session 100 and moving on with editing and stuff like that. So the whole place is just a mess, let's be honest. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here because it's been about a month and you guys have had some phenomenal questions in the meantime. So we're going to start tackling them today, right now. Our first question comes from, and I hope I say this correctly, Akos Jacob, maybe Jacob. We're just going to go with it. Hello, I just started watching the series. You are at the part when they are at the ghost town. And your question is, how come the players only have 3 Pokemon when in the games you can have 6? Is it a balance reason, which was just done in the background of the world's history, or is there a story reason that the law doesn't allow more than 3? So let's talk about that, because I've changed my stance on it, and we've talked about it a few times, but you know, it's never bad to do a refresher. So at the start of the game, it was the player's first big campaign. We had done a couple one-shots, we'd done some beta testing for Pokemon, and the one thing I knew was that with each team member effectively being their own 5th edition player character, I needed things to be as simple as possible for new players to understand so that I could get those gears turning and get them thinking creatively. Because if you hand somebody who's played D&D like 2 or 3 times, say like a 5th level wizard sheet, right? They've got, you know, 2nd level spells to deal with. They've got 3rd level spells maybe. Like there's a lot of text and a lot of things that if you don't play D&D a lot, they don't mean anything to you. It doesn't make any sense. So even with the players knowing what the moves are and can do in the games, they were all at different levels of Pokemon knowledge, and I needed it to be as easy as possible for me to remember how to help them. We started out their character sheets were note cards in the beginning, so I had to kind of cram a lot of stuff on there. So having 3 Pokemon on their team made it easier for me to make some adjustments to their teams on the fly. And it also really allowed the players to do a deep dive on each individual Pokemon. Because starting out, you know, Crash and Nubster had abilities they could use 3 times a day, and if you had to track that with 5 other things, it would get out of hand pretty quickly. I also didn't want them to just go out and catch 6 things and then suddenly every single combat from the get-go, we've got minimally 30 allied combatants. That was something I really wanted to avoid. Now, obviously, we've done some stuff like that in the future. I won't talk specifics on it in case anybody's not caught up. My in-game reason for it is just think in terms of how different it would be to care for a fish versus a dog, right? Very basic way to break that down. If you've got a fish, they need an entire different set of care than a dog does. Now, they may not be the same level of complexity. They might be pretty easy to take care of, like a goldfish, you know. Easy to roll with. You might get lucky and have a dog that just eats whatever food and you're good to go. Now let's take that to the logical extreme, and I now have a crocodile that can conjure an infinite amount of water. I have a small duck that can produce flame out of nowhere. No trainer in their right mind is going to go seeking out multiple of these creatures. They might specialize in a type. They might have 2 or 3 that are a little different. But unless your job is to be a Pokemon trainer, you're probably not catching that many Pokemon. The players are kind of the exception in the world. They're definitely not the rule. Obviously, some of the professional battlers and the gym leaders, etc., they might have, you know, upwards of 10 total. But at any given time, they're probably walking around with 2 or 3. We have upped the team scales in some more recent sessions. I did tie it to the gym badges. So in world, if you can prove that you can get enough badges, obviously people will start letting you have more Pokemon on you, because that at that point that is your job. Your job is to be a Pokemon trainer. So the short answer, out of game. I didn't want the whole episode to be me explaining a bunch of rules, or if we get into a combat, I wanted to keep it kind of punchy. And the short answer for the in-game is like, why would you want 6 superpowered creatures if you're 12? And more importantly, why would you want a 12-year-old to have 6 superpowered creatures that they have no idea how to care for? So hopefully that kind of clears things up for you. Obviously we do change those rules going forward, but in the beginning I needed it to be as simple as possible. But let's move on. We go to Richie202. I remember in one of your earlier Professor's Lab videos you talked about milestones that certain Pokemon have to hit in order to evolve. I was wondering if you could tell us some of the milestones that caused some of the TOTS evolved Pokemon to evolve, such as what caused a number of team members to evolve. Now I'm going to leave the specific names out of there in case anybody's not caught up. So let's talk milestones, because I talk about milestones all the time, and I'm going to continue my trend of never mentioning the specific milestones that have been needed in the past. So they're a very personal and individual thing for each team member. So it's a lot of work up front to figure out what are you looking for a certain team member to evolve. Now we're not using any kind of XP tracking. We did it in the beginning and I hated it. It really bogged things down. Now I know that's kind of the point in the Pokemon world, is you go out, you battle, you get experience, and you move on. But we wanted to tell a story that goes beyond a bunch of children go out, they fight a bunch of things, they use their animals for fighting. So I really wanted the focus to be on the story and the story elements and what the players are interested in. So at first, obviously, yeah, they were very into the battling scene. They got very, very in-depth. They really wanted to tackle every trainer on the road, and that's a lot of work on both sides. And then sessions would end up just being one fight. So they would go out, they'd find a trainer, they'd battle, and that's our 90 minutes for the week. And that was it. And the players kind of started to slow down on that. I got pretty burned out on just making a bunch of trainers. And it really just ended up not being what the focus was for the TOTS. They got very invested in each other's stories, and the rest is sort of history. So I won't talk specifics on the milestones. I will say keen-eyed observers might know what some of the milestones have been. They are quite similar in scope and scale to the early game of the TOTS trying to teach their team members new moves. So, I throw it a couple times like, okay, if you crit, that's the first step in learning a new move, right? So you might have to make a constitution check every time you want to do something. Let's say you have Fire Fang and you're trying to do Ember. Just a random example, right? But you wanna be able to do that Fire Fang at range. The Pokemon that has Fire Fang is probably doing, let's say, 2d6. Let's throw out a random amount. They're a physical attacker, right? They want to mix it up. So their power doesn't come from the fire that they're able to lob. So a milestone there would be, okay, we're doing a constitution check to build up enough heat in your mouth to then throw it, 10, 15, 30 feet, however far you want it to go. They've got to make that constitution check. I don't make it particularly difficult. Usually it's a DC 10, sometimes it's a DC 8. If I know their constitution modifier is low or even negative, I might slide it even further down. Because I'm not looking to tell the players, no, what you're trying to do is impossible. I'm looking to tell them, hey, it's okay to fail sometimes. You might have to skip your turn for this. That's the kind of scope that we have for the evolution milestones. Now I really do encourage the players these days to tell me how their Pokemon feel. Now that there's, I'm not going to say specific numbers again in case somebody's not caught up, but they have a lot of team members, okay? There's a bunch. There's a whole bunch of them. So it's a lot for me to keep track of. So I have, in recent sessions in the last couple months and years, I have encouraged the players to tell me how their Pokemon feel, what they think, what their goals and aspirations are. And maybe someday we'll talk about those, because that would inform you guys of what the milestones are that I'm looking for. I encourage the players to not only play into the strengths of their teammates, but really play up their weaknesses. So a lot of the milestones are sort of like RP based. They're very, very rarely is it a battle specific thing. But once they hit all those milestones, I do just look for a neat moment. And I might even tell the players, hey, such and such a teammate is sort of really close to evolving. So let's find a moment, and I'm gonna kind of lob it up to you, and I might have you describe what the scene looks like, because that's something I'm really into these days, is getting the players more involved in the storytelling, because they're very creative. They have a lot of great ideas, and I'm just one dude. So, you know, there's a lot of great minds in one room. I'm more than happy to offload some of the burden to them and let them tell me how they're feeling and tell me how they're meeting those milestones. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I know I'm speaking in vagaries as always, but that's sort of where we're at for milestones. They're very personal. Each Pokemon has their own milestones. They each have a set amount. I don't give more milestones to one than I would to another, but those milestones can change and become different based on what the player's goals are for that Pokemon. So hopefully, again, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Let's jump on down. D-Swag 2014. Always love these D-Swag questions. Let's see what we got. Do you calculate AC through Dex Mods, or do you do it separately like natural armor? I love a healthy mixture of both. For the TOTS campaign, right now, the way it's functioning, AC is pretty much just a number plucked out of a hat, usually between like 13 and 16. Because again, with everybody effectively having, you know, 3 to 6 Pokemon on their team at any given time, I can't have all of them with an AC 25 and they're going nuts and things are crazy. So a lot of the Pokemon that I will put in front of them usually have between a 13 and 17 AC, and usually between a +4 to +7 to hit. That's usually the ceiling, unless we're doing a boss encounter, which we'll talk about at some point. I usually keep the stats kind of in that window so that they feel like they could use anything in any fight against any opponent. So I also disagree with stuff like the way I handle dexterity usually is based in no small part on the Pokemon speed stat from the games. But that leads to problems, because if we look at something like Onyx, I don't care what the games say, it's a giant rock snake. It should have a high armor class and a low speed and be a gigantic creature, because it's a big snake made out of rocks. So for edge cases like that, I might substitute dexterity for constitution. To go a complete opposite direction, I might put in something like intelligence, maybe wisdom, in the same way that a monk or a barbarian could, adding either an additional stat or a different stat from dexterity to their armor. That's sort of how I handle that stuff. I really I'm not a huge fan of how important dexterity is in at least 5th edition D&D, so I try to avoid that where I can, especially in cases where the players really aren't in control of what the dexterity stat of a new teammate would be. So I'm not super keen on that. I like to give them a lot more room to play. Moving on down, we have another one from D-Swag. Outside of campaign question, and maybe a bit early, being you guys are just getting back into it, but would you start another game to go up on YouTube, i.e. a Nuzlocke or the like? So as some of you may or may not know, for the Patreon a few months back, it might even be a year ago now, Joel, Tia, and I, aka Milo, Phoebe, and I, sat down. We did a three-player Soul Link of Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and the amount of time and effort that added to everybody's schedule was pretty intense. And by everybody, I do mean Joel. Joel handled that while I was still running the sort of editing of the normal sessions, etc. We've tried a few times in the past where Joel and I have sat down. Obviously, we played through like Pikmin and stuff on Twitch, and all those went up on YouTube. The short answer, because I've been rambling on a lot of these, everybody's really busy. Everybody at the table has, you know, full-time jobs, kids. They're looking to expand, get houses. They're adults. They're adults. Most of the players are in their 30s. I'm getting there myself. So everybody's really busy. So while I have plenty of time to kind of get into things when I'm not doing, you know, 11 session 100 chunks, not all of the players do. So it's unlikely at this current moment that we're going to get anything like that up and running. But obviously, it's one thing to pop on Twitch and stream for a bit. It's a whole other thing if we record a sat-down Let's Play. To add to that, Joel and I, about a year and a half ago as well, sat down and recorded, I don't even know, 15 2 to 3 hour episodes of Fire Emblem Three Houses, and then when we went to edit them, we realized that the audio is really janky. So we basically had to scrap all of that as well. So there's a lot of in and out, but basically without saying too much, I would love to do that. I would love to do some more things, and I probably will, but I can't promise that I'll be able to get any of the other tots involved. They're all very busy. There's a lot of babies running around these days. So anyways, let's move on down. Let's get one more for this lovely episode here. We have from TrevorTube. My question for today is, will we see old NPCs from the first few sessions make appearances again? I know some of the characters like Gil and Spud and Pops are fan favorites, and I would love to see them again. I would love to see you make the Cacturn line, as they have always been some of my favorite Pokemon. Happy the series is going to continue so we get even more boarding party content. Absolutely. So let's talk about this. We will only see those old faces again if it makes sense. So we might see Gil or maybe Spud and Pops if the gang revisits some old haunts or they go somewhere where it would make sense for those people to be. I am a big proponent of not putting things in front of the players just because we've seen them before, to kind of check in. Because in canon, Gil is someone that the Tots battled once or twice, and then their adventure really kicked off. And Gil was doing his own stuff too, so it wouldn't really make sense for Gil to seek out the Tots, right? Now, it might make sense for them to bump into him. That could happen. Or someone I know that gets brought up a lot is Officer David, but I try to avoid that in the way of avoiding that a fantasy town consists of the 3 people that you've met that live there. I'm much more a fan of, okay, here's, 6 new people that you didn't meet the first time, because Alluvia is meant to be a town of like 15,000 people. If they go there and the only person they ever run into is like Xavier and Officer David, it really doesn't feel that way. So hopefully that kind of makes sense without just sort of shutting it down. I would never say never, but it would only happen if it makes sense. But let's do a Pokemon creation. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Cacturn, Cacnea. Let's get them pulled up over here. Let's see what we got. Cacnea and Cacturn, very, very neat Pokemon. I'm a big fan of this line myself. Obviously, Cacnea, we're starting out easy peasy. Grass type. Our abilities, we have Sandveil. I have Sandveil, I think it's popped up in a few builds before, but just in case. When this Pokemon is in a Sandstorm, it adds its proficiency bonus to its armor class and gains a +1 to attack rolls and saving throws if it's in a Sandstorm. The hidden ability, obviously being Water Absorb. When the Pokemon would be dealt water damage, it instead regains 1/2 of the damage that would be dealt to it as hit points rounded down. You cannot overheal with this, but it can put you back to your maximum. And that ability line does stay the same when we get to Cacturn. So let's talk about a move set here. Obviously, regrettably, our pals are a bit limited in moveset. But that doesn't mean they don't have some unique things that we can put a spin on. Needle Arm. Pretty average bonus to hit. I've got it at a +4 right now. We'll talk stats in a minute. 2d4 grass damage. If the attack critically hits or rolls doubles, your target flinches. Now, you can handle flinch however you want. The way I handle flinch is basically, rather than them being fully stunned and skipping their turn, they just don't get an attack bonus and they can't have advantage on their next attack against you. So basically it just shuts down one attacker if they flinch. But they still get a turn, because action economy is very important, especially in 5th edition, and the homebrew nonsense that is the TOTS game and everything moving forward, just the way we've designed everything. Poison Sting. Again, kind of a basic one, but it's sort of a staple on Cacnea at least. Anytime you run into them in like Ruby Sapphire in that little desert, always they're throwing poison stings out and they always get that 30% chance to poison you. So let's talk about it. +4 to hit, same as the other one. 1d6 poison damage. If the attack critically hits or rolls maximum damage, the target is poisoned. So that's, you know, it's pretty simple. Nothing too flashy there, but we do have a ranged attack on there now, so if something is out of range of Needle Arm and you can't get them flinched, you can at least throw a Poison Sting their way. I gave him Leech Seed, same deal, +4 to hit. I have it dealing 1 grass damage. Your mileage may vary on this. For a lot of lifesteal effects, typically you get back half of what you deal. If you do 1d4 grass damage on Leech Seed, if you round down, a 1 through 3 is going to give you 1 hit point back, so I just kind of simplified that here. I give it a 10-foot range. At the start of each of your turns, you steal 1 hit point from the target unless the target takes fire damage or uses an action to remove the seeds. So this is something you would set up early, set it and forget it, steal a couple hit points every round, and just sort of move on. Because there's no limit on how many targets you could hit with this, you just have to actually hit them with it. And then Sandstorm, because obviously we want to be able to set up Sand Veil if that's the ability that we land on. As an action, you concentrate and you set up a 10-foot radius Sandstorm centered on yourself. Now the bummer is, rules is written, you're a grass type, you would take damage from that Sandstorm. I would probably rule it if they have Sand Veil, maybe they don't. So it would be anything other than you that's not rock, ground, or steel type is going to start taking like 1d4 ground damage every turn. However you would want to handle that, I would say is probably the best way to do it, depending on the power level of your setting. Cacnea is a small creature. It's very, very small. I've got it at a nice healthy AC of 9, which is not great. And 8 hit points because the HP stats really nothing to write home about. I've got it at a 15 strength, which is pretty rare. And also a 15 intelligence, because this thing's got pretty high attack and special attack. Dexterity sitting at a lovely 8, because again, it's not the fastest. Constitution of 10, intelligence of 15, wisdom and charisma both at 10. Now, I might flex a couple of those here and there, just depending on how things are playing out. I might make it intimidating when we get down to Cacturn, who we'll talk about right now. So let's jump on down. The abilities obviously don't change, so let's talk about what does, the attacks and the attack bonuses. Needle Arm, we're going to double that attack bonus up to +8, and we'll talk about the stats in a minute. 3d4 grass damage now, but maintains that same rules text. If you critically hit or roll doubles, your target flinches. You now just have an extra chance to do that. I might even have, if you critically hit or roll doubles, maybe you roll an additional die. I'm a big fan of that mechanic right now. It kind of gets overused in my new designs. But let's say you roll 3d4 and you roll 2 2s and a 1, you would roll an additional d4 on top of that. If that one is also a 2 or a 1, you repeat the process until you don't match, which can get out of hand, but that's kind of part of the fun, right? So that's how I would do Needle Arm. We're going to change Poison Sting out for Feint Attack. Now, obviously, we're going to lose our ranged bonus here, but we're going to kind of mess around with some dark damage. So +8 to hit, 1d8 dark damage. Melee range, if you use this attack in darkness or at night, so if you're in a cave or it's nighttime, the attack would deal an additional die of damage. That's going to put you at 2d8 dark damage, which could be kind of fun. I'm leaning into that a lot more in recent designs as well, where dark and ghost types kind of get buffed up at night to encourage players that have those types to kind of travel the roads at night, you know? Rather than laying down to camp, they might push a few extra hours into the night. We could do some nighttime encounters, because that could change what they would run into. You never know. Leech Seed, +8 to hit, so far more likely to happen. Does twice as much damage as before to a healthy 2. So same deal, 10-foot range. You steal 2 hit points from your target unless it takes fire damage or uses an action to remove the seeds. And then something a little more fun, we do drop Sandstorm for spikes. This is mostly because I want to talk about if they happen to have Water Absorb as an ability, they don't really care for Sandstorm. So I throw spikes on there, because again, it's a cactus, kind of makes sense. You take a 5-foot square within 15 feet of you, and you put pointed spikes in the area. A creature that moves into the area or starts its turn there takes 2 piercing damage. Now you can stack this effect up to 3 times, or you could have 3 different squares coded at the same time. This is really powerful with any sort of movement lockdown effect. If you can prevent your enemy from getting away, if you're at the point in a combat where you've sort of surrounded them and there's nowhere safe, you start dropping spikes under their feet, and then all of a sudden they're taking 2, 4, 6 damage at the start of each of their turns. It can add up pretty quick. Nice little bit of static damage. We've got an arbitrary amount of hit points now, up to 63, depending on when they evolve and obviously what's happened on the way. Your mileage may vary. AC jumps up to 10. Proficiency bonus, I've got it at 4. I've been doing 2 for the first stage and 4 for the second stage if the Pokemon only evolves once, because that's about the stage in the game that I would expect to see a Cacturn show up. The strength goes up to a healthy 18, that's quite nice. The dexterity jumps to 10, constitution 13, intelligence also jumps to 18, wisdom and charisma go to 12. And again, given that it's a dark type and it's kind of spooky, it's got scarecrow vibes, looking at this now, I might change that charisma up a little bit. I might put it to maybe 15, maybe give it a proficiency in intimidation. That could be something fun to do. Your movement speed, and I forgot to mention this for Cacnea as well, would probably be about 30 feet. I could be persuaded to give Cacnea 25, but you know, they don't really have the upsides of being like a halfling and re-rolling any natural ones, so I try not to nerf their speeds if I can help it. And then your size goes up to medium. So that is how I would do Cacnea and Cacturn. But that is going to do it for this bout of questions. So thank you all very, very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed the return to the lab videos. If you're caught up on the sessions, I hope you have enjoyed everything up till now. We will start opening the doors slightly if you guys have some questions on those newer sessions. Maybe what I'll do is I'll try to every couple weeks do a more recent session update. That way I can warn the folks that aren't caught up and say, hey, if you're not caught up, just skip this one for now until you are. But we'll start talking about those things. As always, if you have more questions, you can drop them in the comment section of this or any of the videos. I do see all of the comments. So wherever you have your questions, wherever you leave them, I will try to get to as many as I can. But for now, gang, thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!